Hey everyone, today I wanted to do short reviews of two introductory Sanskrit textbooks to help you decide which one might be right for you. The first one is the Introduction to Sanskrit by Thomas Egenes. This is just the part one, there is a second part. And then the Cambridge Introduction to Sanskrit by Dr. A.M. Ruppel. Both of these are really great books, but they have their strengths, their weaknesses, and there really isn't a lot of information out there to help you choose between the two, so that's what I'm here to do today. Learning Sanskrit was a goal of mine over quarantine, and I've really enjoyed my experience learning it. Still have a whole lot to learn, but both of these books really helped me get off the ground, and I'm going to go ahead and discuss the strengths and weaknesses of both. So I'm going to start with A.M. Ruppel's Cambridge Introduction to Sanskrit. One thing that I really like about this book is that it front loads the Devanagari script like immediately. It's all covered in one chapter. I believe it's actually just the first chapter, right? So after you finish the first chapter, you have the alphabet down, right? And the alphabet can be pretty intimidating for people. It actually really shouldn't be, right? If you can chip away at it a little bit by bit, you can cover it in a week, right? Making flashcards, maybe learning 5 to 10 different letter combinations a day. And then, it can get a little confusing when you start getting into combining consonants and things like that. But, in this book, it really just loads it right away, right? This is some of the practice exercises at the end of chapter 1, and that's something that's really awesome. In Thomas Egenes' book, I don't think you finish learning the script until like chapter 7 or so, right? It's very bit by bit, which it has its benefits, but I don't know, there's something just, for me, it was really helpful just to get it out of the way, right? Like if you're not gonna make it this far and you're not gonna learn the script, we're not even gonna proceed further. So that's something I actually really appreciated from it. Another real strength from this work is that when you get to the practice sentences towards the end and the readings, they're taken from Hindu scriptures, right, or Hindu texts, which is great. In Egenes' book, you're in chapter, let's say, we can go all the way to lesson 17, and you're learning sentences like, when my sister was born, she smiled at my mother. Her father's wife is her mother. The son of the king has no brothers. Right? That's all well and good. Whereas if we kind of contrast it with chapter 17, some of the readings you're getting, you're reading from the Mahabharata. Right? And for me, and probably for a lot of modern learners, right, you want to get to the good stuff right away, right? You want to start reading the classical texts. So that is a benefit. One of the drawbacks, however, is that in Ruppel's book, she doesn't really teach you how to parse those sentences, right? She gives you the vocabulary, she gives you some of the context, and that's helpful, but she doesn't actually teach you how to parse the sentences. One thing I will say is that while there isn't a whole lot of guidance on how to do these readings in the book, she has started presenting some of the videos on her YouTube channel, right? So she has a shloka from the Subhashi Tarnava. I'm probably butchering that right now, but so she's starting to do that, and that's really helpful. And I should as well, like, she has a YouTube channel where she goes through each of the individual chapters and explains them for you, which is super helpful and really amazing. And that's free. It's available on YouTube. So I would definitely look that up if you're going to get that book. And so that's really immense to have the teacher there with you explaining everything. But I do wish there was more about parsing sentences in this book. A strength of both of these books is that the grammatical explanations are clear for each. Even if if you're not a linguist, you don't have any background, and it certainly helps if you've read a language like Latin or Greek or Old English, right, or something with declensions. It'll help you, but even if you don't have that experience, both these books really do a good job of explaining that. One of the benefits of Egenes' book, though, is there's just a lot of room to make notes. Right, so like, if you're someone like me and maybe you like writing in the books, that's great. Right? And the Devanagari script is super clear. There's a lot of space between them. In Ruppel's book, there isn't a whole lot. Right? For example, this is one of the spaces. So there's not a whole lot of room. Obviously, you can make notes in other places, but that's a kind of a minor drawback. Both of them present the tables the declension tables, right, in a really clear way. They do them in a different order. Something that's interesting about Egenes is he takes an approach that tries to get you to learn Sanskrit from more of an Indian perspective, or the way that it was taught, right? So instead of being introduced, say, first, second, third person for verbs, he introduces third, second, first person, right? Or instead of maybe memorizing a table from top to bottom, you memorize it from left to right. So that's something that's interesting. And the declension table is a little out of order. So in his tables, you learn nominative, accusative, instrumental, dative, ablative, genitive, locative. And in Ruppel's tables, it is a different order. Right? She gives it to you in, let's see here. I had this written down somewhere, but of course I lost it. She gives her tables, I just had it. Nominative, vocative, accusative, instrumental, dative, ablative, genitive, and locative. So, I mean, there's no real huge difference there, but it's just a minor difference. So it can get kind of confusing, if you're trying to use, especially both books at the same time, cross-referencing them, or, maybe a table doesn't make sense in one and the other. It's just something you really have to take into consideration. So some of the bad things for each is, one thing about this book that I really didn't like is her explanations of Sundi, right, which is kind of the way that sounds are combined within a word, or sometimes can be internal or external, right? So when a word that ends in a, right, what happens when it comes next to the following word that ends in an or an and it becomes ah, right? And sometimes with consonants, at least, it was something that's really difficult for me to understand or to get into my head and memorize. It's a little too intense, whereas in Egenes' books, he breaks it down piece by piece, because, I'll say the Sundi was the most difficult thing for me to really kind of learn and internalize, and it's something I still struggle with. And Egenes really breaks it down bit by bit. Right? Here's a little bit, and so on and so forth. Whereas in Ruppel's book, it's a little heavy. Something as well, Ruppel, there are a lot of kind of minor errors in here. To her credit, if you go to her website, she has listed an errata page. But when you're studying a language, especially with a different script than your own, and there are these kind of little mistakes, even if it's something as little as or ah, which can change the meaning of the word, it can change the case. It's very difficult. So it's a minor thing. If you get the errata page, you'll be okay, but it's something that's kind of annoying. I didn't pick up too many issues with the Egenes, but I'm sure they're there. I just wasn't able to detect them. But again, one great thing about hers is there are resources on her website. I had read some reviews that said that there are answers, or there is no answer key in the book. However, when I reached out to her and I asked for them, she gave it to me right away. I read some negative reviews saying they never got the answer key. I think I got them in like 2 days or something like that, so they're there. Whereas the Egenes' book is really meant for self-study, and at the back of the book, there's the answer key. Right, so that's something really, really great. A negative thing as well about this book is sometimes there's not a lot of reinforcement on a lot of the things that are taught. Right, so you might learn about different kinds of participles. You learn about it, maybe you do a couple exercises in a chapter, and then you don't really see it again, or you don't see that kind of participle again for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 chapters, and by then you've kind of forgotten what it means. Whereas one of the great things about this book, and I absolutely love it for self-study, is that whenever you get to the end of a chapter, you review the vocabulary. Let me see if I can find a great instance of this. You review the vocabulary, and you review the grammatical things that you've learned so far. There's a summary sheet, right? So at the end of lesson 10, once you've completed your lessons, you go to your summary sheet. Right? It goes over the verbs you've learned, right? Goes over the nouns, the different grammatical points, and that's really wonderful. Right? I really wish more textbooks would do that. Right? It keeps everything fresh. So that's something that's really great. It's definitely not a deal breaker, but I know for me, as someone who forgets things quite easily, I love having that with this. So just to wrap it up, overall, these are really, really both great textbooks and kind of with different purposes. They both provide you the framework of the language. This one's a little bit more in depth. I would say this is probably, you know, if you're taking a college course, this is a 2-year textbook, I'd probably say. I mean, it might be one in more advanced courses, but probably 2. And it gives you a lot more information about Sanskrit. This book, however, is designed to get you to be able to read the Bhagavad Gita with the dictionary and as well the second textbook. So if that is your goal, you just want that kind of basic framework, so where you can read obviously one of the greatest works of literature ever made, this is the way to go. And that was my goal, right? I wanted to read the Bhagavad Gita, be able to read some passages of the Mahabharata, and I think after finishing this, having a good Sanskrit dictionary and getting part 2, be ready to do that. So, I mean, both are really great, but one thing I love about this is maybe at some points it was a little too in-depth, some points a little too rushed, is the quality of the readings is really incredible, and even just as a reference book, this is really great to have on your shelf. And as I mentioned, having the YouTube videos up is huge. So, you know, if you're trying to learn Sanskrit, it's hard for me to tell you definitively which one you should go with. I mean, I'd recommend picking up both. I think they're actually both really complementary of one another. But if you're someone who just kind of wants the basics, you don't have a background in learning languages or classical languages, then this is definitely the way to go. If you're someone who's maybe a little bit more advanced, you have a discipline, and you know you're more in tune with kind of being able to grasp some more in-depth grammatical explanations and things like that, this is another way to go. So I hope that helps, and I hope everyone has a great day.